students, Cynthia Nitch here, wanting to do a key topics video for you of something that wasn't covered in the Excel module. I want to go over how to create name ranges, how to do cell references, and some ifs functions. So let's get started. This spreadsheet is about classic cars. And we have the make here, the model year, horsepower, and so forth. And so what I want to do is I want to create each one of these ranges and give it a name. Okay, so this range will have the name model, and this range will have the range name model year. Okay. So let's get that done. So I'll show you an easy way to do it. I can highlight all of these field headings and then the data below them. And when I go to formulas and choose create from selection, it'll say, okay, create names from values in the top row. And so each one of these will now be a name range. So if I click OK, and I go to name manager, you'll see now that I've named these ranges. So I have the acquired title for the range F4 through F15. Horsepower would be G4 through G15. And you look at it and you're like, horsepower would be G4 through G15. So I can edit any one of these individually as I want, or I can highlight it and delete it, or however you want to do it. But if I go in here, I can actually, if I highlight all the owner's last names, you can see that I have a name range called owner last name. If I click on horsepower, it'll go all and highlight all my horsepower. If I click on make, it'll go all the way down. So this right here is called a range, okay? That'll be useful for you for what's coming next. So now that we name these as individual names or ranges, I could go in and let's say I want to find the average of horsepower. So I can do equal sign and I can type in the word average, and if I find it down here, I can double click. And I want to find the average of horsepower. So I'll start typing horsepower, double click, and then close my parentheses, and you'll see that it highlighted that range called horsepower. Now if I didn't want horsepower, I could come in here and type in the name value, and it would give me the average of this value here. So another handy thing is now that you've named these ranges, I can go to any sheet on the workbook, and I can call up that range. So if I do equal sign average, right, I'll double click on that average, and it'll do value, and then close it, and it'll give me the average of the value of a classic car, right? So if I didn't like value, I could do horsepower, and it would give me it there. So isn't that neat? So now I don't need to know that horsepower is like G4 to G15. I named it horsepower, so now I could go on any sheet in this workbook and call that up. So it makes it a lot easier when you have a lot of data, and then you're not constantly, highlighting tons of data and maybe accidentally missing one. You know that there's a little bit more of a quality assurance there. Okay, so I'm going to show you a function now. It's called SUMIF, and there's a SUMIFs. But right now, the SUMIF is less than 2 criteria. So I want to find the value of all the convertibles, right? And so I need to just add or find those 2 ranges and get some criterias out of there. So I'm going to click on right here because this is where I want the solution. And I'm going to go to my FX insert function little bar here, and I'm going to type in what I'm looking for. So I would just type in SUMIF, and I would click go, and then it would give me the option of which one I want, and I would double click on the one I want. So here you go. Here's a function. It says, hey, what's the range you want me to look at, and what's the criteria in that particular range that you want me to find. And then since it's a sum function, And what do you want me to add? Or what do you want me to add once I find that criteria? Sometimes I work backwards on these just because it makes more sense to me. But sum if. So my sum is I want to find the value of all convertibles. So my sum would be value, right? And my criteria would be, value is my name range that I named up here. And then my criteria would actually be the convertible itself. So I would type that in. Okay? And then lastly, I want, the convertible can be found in the range called model. So I have two ranges. I have my model range and my sum or my value range, which I'm going to add all those together, and I have one criteria convertible. So then I click OK, and there you go. There's that. So let's do average if. So I go back into my FX. I type in average if, and then that's the one I want. And same thing. So the average is the acquisition date, right? So I would click on the average range because I'm going to work backwards. And the acquisition date is that range is called acquired. So I can just type that in. And the criteria is hard tops. But make sure, see how it says hard tops right here? But in the criteria of here, it's just hard top. So you have to type in the exact criteria. And the range that hard top sits in is model. So I'll type in model here, and I'm good to go, right? 1958 is the average age. I'm going to go back to home and take that decimal out. All right. Now this is number of hard tops, so it's a count if. So we just go here and we just count all the hard tops in the model range. So this one's actually, the counts are a lot easier. So I'm going to do count if. I'm going to press enter and then enter again because I like that count if. And then my range is model, right? And my criteria is hard top with no S. And I press enter and I have 5 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so these are more than 2 criteria, right? It wants to find the value of convertibles purchased after 1975. So they want the value of all the convertibles. 1, 2, purchased after 1975 is 3. So let's get started. So I'm going to go FX, and I'm going to type in sum ifs, and I don't have to press go. I actually can just press enter, and it finds it, so I can just press enter again. So I'm finding, so look, it just has a sum now. It switched it. It flipped it. So it now has a sum range on top, as these ones had that sum range on the bottom. So these are like switched because I can have as many criteria as I want. So the sum range is the value of convertibles. Let's work on that one first. So my sum is the value, and the criteria is, the range is model, right? But the criteria is convertible. And it's not with that, keep that S out. Okay, so now I'm working on my second range. So my second range is acquire, right? Let me double check that. Acquired. All right, I know this is right because it's popping up. And what I want to look for is after 1975. So I would do greater than 1975. And so I could go on and on, right? I could do criteria 3, criteria 4, but that's going to give me what I need. So I click OK, and I find the total value of convertibles purchased at that time frame. And I'll just do a little currency sign and get rid of my decimals. All right, average cost of hard tops. Let's find that. So it's an average ifs, double click. And then it's going to say, hey, find the average range of insurance costs. So I know that that range, I'm going to go up here just so you guys can see it. I know what that range is called, insurance. So I'm going to type in insurance here. And my first criteria will do model because it's easy. And what I want to find is hard top. So I do hard top. And the criteria second would be horsepower, right? So, but it's more than 250 horsepower. So horsepower sits it's its own range, right? Horsepower. And I want to find what is more than, so greater than 250 is my horsepower that I want to find. And then I click OK, and there we go. $1,600 is the average cost of that if I have that much horsepower. Okay, so number of hardtops purchased since 1975. So let's get that one done. So it would be a count ifs. So I type in count ifs and click OK. And then, so here we go. It says, hey, what's your criteria range? It would be model. And I'm looking for hardtop. And the other one is acquired, right? Because I'm looking at the date. I spelled it wrong. And then my criteria would be less than 1975. Actually, be less than or equal to 1975. And that would be, I only have two criteria here, right? Because it's just count the hardtops purchased since 1975. And click OK. And so there are 5 hardtops before or equal to 1975. And that's how you do a range. Range names come in really handy, and you'll see in your exam that that I have you do on this, that you'll notice that you're going to want to do range names because it's just such an easier way to complete the homework or to complete the exam. All right, well, let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.